lord over the planet as the last son of Krypton.
Why doesn't this twist on Superman's parents work? I mean, we can tell different stories, but there's almost a self-awareness where the movie almost doesn't expect us to believe it. And when you repeatedly have to say that something is true, then it just really weakens the twist. I mean, good rule for filmmaking, show, don't tell, and another rule for it, if for some reason you are deciding to tell, don't tell us a million times. But James Gunn is a good director, so if he's going to be doing this, then it must be the only option. You know, it's not like he wants to tell us a million times that, yes, my Jor-El twist is actually real. You know, he doesn't want to be answering this in interviews for the rest of his life, obviously. And I think the answer to that is in how they decided to make this movie. I mean, it's obviously not news to anybody that superhero fatigue is a thing, but, you know, this movie still did $1 billion in the box office just about, so even if you want to say that's an exception, it's not a total rule for it. I think if you look at it a little closer, where the fatigue is really starting to set in is on origin stories, because we're seeing movies like this and Fantastic Four, Spider-Man, even his introduction in the MCU was more so trying to get rid of that traditional origin story. And when I'm talking about a traditional origin story, I'm talking about Joseph Campbell's hero's journey. And for those of you who have never heard of that, it's basically just your basic plot structure where our hero discovers a new power of some kind, then learns more from a mentor who then either dies or they're not able to learn from the mentor anymore for some reason, leading to them having to grow beyond to become our hero. It's a pretty basic story, and even if you've never heard of it, you've definitely seen or read something with it. You know, there's a million examples, you know, Dune, Star Wars, Harry Potter, Hunger Games, most of the MCU, DC, it's everywhere. So if we're seeing all these movies, then it makes sense that we're going to get a little sick of hearing the same story just with different characters, and even more so when it's the same character, you know, like with Superman, Batman, Spider-Man, we're getting a new version of that character every decade, you know, so it makes sense that there is an origin fatigue, and I understand why they want to just kind of skip the origin for Superman here and just leave it to the opening crawl. And I get why they did this. Don't think my criticizing of this is me saying that this is a bad movie. I loved this movie. It's one of my 2 S-tier movies from last year. Click the card here to see my full tier list. I ranked 35 movies from 2025, but at the same time, I've also watched a lot of Superman movies, TV shows, I've even read some of the comics. I'm not saying I'm the only one. The reason why the story can work in this format is because we all know the origin of Superman. We can just dive right into the fun. Plus, it's not like there isn't comic precedent for Superman's parents to not be heroic or altruistic. You know, in the Elseworlds storyline, we kind of get an exploration of this as they're trying to save Krypton at any cost, or even really just being power hungry at points. And it's not that this is a bad story or is somehow just a bad twist. You know, this could actually be a really good story, especially if you're having General Zod be set up as a villain in the future. You know, this is something where Superman can be struggling as he's a child of 2 worlds, as his Kryptonian past is seeming to haunt the Earth future that he wants. There's plenty of drama here, but this is a big change to Superman's origin here, and when you're skipping the origin story and the steps of how he gets here, you're counting on us to know his origin story. You know, it's kind of like you're trying to have your cake and eat it too, because yeah, you want to have this twist, but you also want to count on us knowing Superman's origin, and Superman's origin has Jor-El being a mentor for him on the same level as Pa Kent, you know, so this deviation just kind of feels like it's out of left field, and that's why the initial reaction, even in the story, is like, oh, Lex has to be making it up.
Pretty obvious.
And sure, they set it up in the beginning as the message is incomplete, and, you know, we're being told again by the robots who are healing him what the message means for him, and, you know, we're even told later by Superman what the story means for him, but again, we're being told these things instead of shown. It would be more impactful if we were seeing Superman's origin this Superman's origin, and then we're seeing him struggle with the idea of what did my Kryptonian parents want. But with no Zod as of right now and no origin story here, it feels like this twist is kind of just made up for only this movie, which feels kind of contrarian to the idea that, hey, we're building a DC universe off of this movie. You know, we should be setting up future storylines. You know, I honestly don't think that this will ruin DC per se, but, you know, I hope this video ages horribly. You know, if Gunn were to then cast someone like Tom Hardy to be Zod, all of a sudden we are exploring these stories, and it's like, oh yeah, the plan was there, we just wanted to skip the origin story here because everybody's seen it a million times. Honestly, I hope that works, and that this video just ages like milk.
Ugh, what's that smell?
It's either bad meat or good cheese.
But if this twist is really just in one story, then you start to see that it's very convenient. You know, Lex's plan works perfectly here, which isn't the problem here. You know, the thing with his character is that he's intelligent enough to be a threat to Superman, but the problem more so is that he just gets really lucky. You know, how lucky is it for him that not only does his plan work, but the information he gets, he is able to damage Superman with. And it feels like this Lex in particular would resent the idea that anything he's done to succeed involved luck. You know, his key character trait and the center of his main speech in the movie is about envy. His jealousy of Superman that he has these powers and is at the center of the world's conversation. You know, even if you go beyond the Superman comparison, you know, he hates being compared to other geniuses. I think it's pretty obvious to say that Lex would resent the idea that his plan worked for any reason that's outside of his own control, you know, especially if it's luck. You know, just imagine what his reaction would be if, like, one of his goons said to him just something basic like, wow, boss, great job, that plan was amazing, and we got so lucky that not only did we get the information to hurt Superman, but that it was authentic too. Man, that's so lucky. If this is contained in one story, then we're really changing Superman's parents for not much reason because we're not maximizing the story for Clark here. Throw in the fact that our main antagonist really has his own creed that this is going against too, because it is lucky that he gets the message to say what he wants it to, and it just kind of lessens the story a little bit overall, which can hurt the future for it. You know, it's more in character for Lex to want to create a deepfake of Superman's parents saying the exact same thing, and it also goes with the themes too. Instead of just the monkeys on social media, you're also dealing with the same misinformation you get from AI deepfakes. Now I hear you saying, yeah, sure, it's easy to complain, everyone's a critic, what would you be doing so different to make this story better? And the first thing I want to say to that is, thank you, I'm glad you asked. Now, David Cornsweet has compared this movie to Star Wars and the fact that you kind of just have to jump in, the universe is established, catch up, and, you know, I do like that idea for it, but I'm going to go back a little bit so that we can still have that idea and combine it to make the twist work a little better with some ideas from the original trilogy. So I'm going to say that we're saving the story we do know for a sequel, and that we're going to head back a little bit, not all the way to Clark's childhood, but more so when he first gets to Metropolis, you know, still exploring his powers as Superman, and first starting at the Daily Planet, kind of that time range, you know, and then the next question is, who's the villain going to be? Because we're saving Lex for the sequel, beyond just maybe like a tease at the end, and we're saving Zod for after the twist comes out. So then you kind of have to look at who the other Superman villains are, and I think we can rule out Darkseid and Doomsday being in the DCU for a while. Now, I know everybody's expecting me to say Brainiac here, but I don't really think a movie like this would really do him justice as a character, because again, our main focus here is on Superman, learning how he's going to be using his powers and stuff like that, and I think the villain we should be going with here is Mr. Mxyzptlk.
Okay, I'll give you a rule.
And yes, I know his powers are a little bit sillier, but I think in an origin story, especially one for Superman, it can work pretty well because the focus is more going to be on Superman. And so often with the origin stories, what we get is, a villain who has similar powers but is just on the opposite side. Like in Iron Man, Captain America, Ant-Man, plenty of examples of it. The powers that Mr. Mxyzptlk has are very different from Superman, so we're kind of getting that change on the typical origin story also. So the big difference here is that we get to spend more time with Superman's parents, exploring their backgrounds a bit, as we learn that this version of Jor-El isn't the same noble version that was played by Marlon Brando and Russell Crowe. We start to have an inkling, a suspicion of it, so it's less out of left field when the twist comes, but then when Lex discovers it, we've known it's possible, but it's still a gut punch because it is a pretty big change on the story. Then you throw in some Zod too, and you really can maximize this twist here, which is a good expectation subversion. I just feel like it could have been done better, In no way did this ruin the movie for me, though. Again, one of my 2 S-tier movies of the year. But now I want to shift the question to you guys. What did you think of the twist in the movie? Is anything I've been ranting about the last few minutes resonating with you? Do you think it would have made it better? Do you have anything you'd like to add down below to add to this story? I'd love to hear what you guys think, but that's all I've got for you guys today. So if you enjoyed, please drop a like, subscribe if you want more like this. I'll see you next time on STV.